Great to be back in Kristiansand, and it's always a pleasure to be here as a transplanted Norwegian who came to California. I'm going to spend a year over there and go back to Oslo, and took one look at San Francisco and this area that Keith has described and decided, no, I don't think I'll go back. I'll stay. And it's been fantastic, and I had the pleasure of working at that institution. And I don't know how many of you recognize Doug Engelbart. I think that was the third picture that old guy brought up. Incredible guy. Of course, most people think that the mouse, I better not pull this out, the mouse, right, came from Apple or Xerox PARC. Wrong. It was Doug Engelbart. In 1968, gave a presentation in San Francisco. Got a standing ovation from 1,000 engineers. It's first time ever, I think, and probably never happened since that time. And really good guy. And he often came over visiting SRI. I had a workshop at SRI a couple of years ago. And we were standing out in the reception area, and Doug walked on by. And actually, we were looking at the mouse in the glass cage. And people were, you know, oohing and awing, seeing the mouse. And Doug walked by. I said, Doug, can you come over here? I'd like you to meet some people. So they were just thrilled to meet the Doug Engelbart. So anyway, I spent 22 years at SRI, formerly Stanford Research Institute. And then we did what Keith said, you know, that most people in Silicon Valley do. They look to run their own company. They want spin-outs. We saw SRI spinning out units. In fact, if you go to the SRI website, you'll find all kinds of interesting information about what SRI does, and it does a lot of different research. In some ways, I would say that SRI is similar to SINTEF in Norway, and most of you know SINTEF, and its relationship to NTNU. SRI and Stanford is not dissimilar to that setup. So at the website you'll see many spinouts. In fact, SRI is probably one of the leading research organizations in the world when it comes to taking technology in our lab and commercializing it, creating companies, building companies around technology. And some of you are familiar with the Siri technology that Apple acquired. Well, that was SRI technology. That was an SRI company. And Steve Jobs said that he needed that for the iPhone. But after 22 years with SRI, looking at these spinouts, I was part of the management team of a group of 75 people inside SRI. And we decided, hey, we want one of those. And so we went to the CEO of SRI and said, we want to spin ourselves out. So we made an agreement, and over the next 12 years, we paid off the intellectual property, which we developed when we were part of SRI. And now we are an employee-owned company, an ESOP. Nothing has changed. I have the same office. I interact with my colleagues at SRI. So it's fantastic. And I'm 5 minutes away from Keith. You know, so I can run over when I have questions about MOOCs or anything. I can run over to Keith and talk to Martha about what is happening at Stanford. And I've had the fortune of getting to know many people at Stanford, including Mitchell Stevens, who's a fantastic guy, who co-teaches the class with Roy P. on education's digital future. If you don't know about that program, I suggest you Google that and go on the website and see all the wonderful information that Roy and Mitchell has put out on their website. They really do a tremendous job in sharing resources, sharing knowledge, and they allow me, as someone who doesn't want to sign up and take exams, I'm too old for that, but I like to show up at seminars and be part of it and mingle with all these young, smart guys. So I do that. And in fact, they're in the third quarter now of that initiative, that class. And the first 2 quarters have been fantastic. Really done a terrific job. But I'm here for another purpose right now. And for the next 20 minutes, and I'll try to be fairly quick, because we have 4 guests here, 4 of the companies participating in this project that Oddgeir is leading, and I have the pleasure of being under his tutelage. And this is a project that I entitled Nordic Edupreneuring. So this started, and I'll give a little project context to start out, and then I'll quickly go through a little bit of background based on the survey that we conducted with participation of about 47, I think, Nordic companies that we went out there, promoted this survey, and tried to get primarily early-stage companies to participate. Because the context is that, and you all know this, that the future of education and also the role of technology are really topics now that everyone is talking about. The convergence of technology and the need to basically disrupt, and that's a word that everyone is using, disrupt whatever the old learning models are. There is growing recognition that things now can be different. We'll see how well we can take advantage of this, but you can see here what has happened in venture funding in the last couple of years. So it's absolutely incredible, and we particularly see this in Silicon Valley, where, of course, about 1/3 of all the venture funding in the United States happens up on Sand Hill Road. So we have plentiful capital in Silicon Valley, and a lot of it is now going to edtech companies. So this Nordic Edupreneuring project, we wanted to identify, we wanted to describe, and evaluate and assess Nordic companies to get an understanding as to what extent some of these things that we're seeing in the United States and in other parts of the world is also happening here in the Nordic region. And what do these companies look like? How ambitious are they in terms of going international? What are some of the challenges they face here in the Nordic region? Because we know the Nordic region is very different. The Nordic educational systems are different. Attitudes towards private industry playing in the education sector might be different, and so on. So, and another part of it, and this is a longer-term goal, is to perhaps build a network of Nordic edutech companies so that they can talk to each other, share information, connect with those of us who are in other parts of the world, including Silicon Valley, where I have worked for close to 35 years now. And in addition to having a day job at SRI and SBI, Strategic Business Insight, which is a spin-out, I spend 2 days a week working with another organization that has an interesting name. It's called Silicon Vikings. How many in the room know about Silicon Vikings? Oh, wow, I'm impressed. This is unrepresentative. If I did this in anywhere else, maybe a handful will go up. So I'm really happy that you know about the Silicon Vikings, because I've been on the board of Silicon Vikings for about 4 or 5 years now, and I lead the special interest group on, guess what, entrepreneurship and learning. So we have meetings. In fact, we have a terrific meeting coming up next week, the day after I fly back, so I had to fight jet lag, and on game-based learning, so designing games for learning. And a good friend of mine, Michael Carter, who is a game designer, is facilitating that session. And we have some wonderful young designers from Silicon Valley that will be talking. So you can find the description of that program. We're going to videotape part of it and so on. So hopefully we can share that with the rest of you. So I'm going to quickly go through some numbers so you get a sense of what was this, who were part of this survey, and what were some of the results coming out of the survey. And then you'll hear from 4 companies that actually participated in it. So here you can see, as you would expect, the 4 big Nordic countries Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark are mostly represented, but we had some Estonian and also some Icelandic companies. We were primarily interested in early stage companies, but a few others also found us and participated. So you can see here, 2013 is a big year for launching products. So it would be great to talk to Nordic Innovation, which graciously funded this project. And don't think anyone made it down from Oslo from Nordic Innovation, but they've been very supportive. And I think it would be great to go back later to look at, how far these companies have come and what they're doing. And so are they, in fact, launching the products in 2013? And you can see here 2009, 10, and 11, and so on. And then a number of them even before 2008. So there were a few more mature companies as well that wanted to be part of this, and we welcome them. Now, so what are these companies really interested? What are they doing? And this is one of the really interesting things, because I set out, when I first wrote the proposal for Nordic Innovation, I did it with the hope, with the idea that perhaps these Nordic companies have a different profile. Can these Nordic companies stand out in global competition? Are they somewhat different? So, and we know that Nordic companies are doing very well in games, in gaming. In fact, some of you might have seen the recent results where I think the 3 top revenue producers for apps for iPads were Nordic companies. 2 Finnish and a Swedish company. 3 top revenue producers, which is unheard of. So it shows, so it's not just Rovio and Angry Birds, and of course everyone knows about those guys. In fact, I gave a presentation in Helsinki in January, and they invited me over to Rovio, and that was interesting. They watch out for these guys because and it's public now. In fact, someone came over to Stanford and gave a presentation at Burton Lee's seminar, and made it clear that they wanted to leverage the brand and leverage the characters, leverage their knowledge of game-based learning into education, and that they're doing some things already in China and so on. So that will be an interesting company. In fact, it's very interesting to look at Nordic publishing companies as a possible exit route for edtech companies that want to get an early out and maybe get some more money and then go on to the next startup. This is how they do it in Silicon Valley. Don't think of one. Just do one, get some more money, and then use that money to go to the next one and so on. And so if you think about that, start early thinking about exit strategies. And then if you think, well, who should I start thinking about? Think about the publishing companies. And I've been tracking them in the US and seeing what they're doing and how they're making acquisitions. And they're making acquisitions all over the place, because they recognize that publishing is not what it used to be. It's going to be very different. They need to go into a different mode that involves more technology, more interactivity, use of iPads, use of portable devices, and so on and so forth. So that's, in fact, I talked to Tekkes about doing another project looking at publishing companies, looking at the big Nordic publishing companies and getting a better understanding of what their plans are, what their activities are in respect to learning. So you can see here, they are game-based learning is on top, mobile learning, online learning tools, and simulations, and so on. So that's kind of what we anticipated, but it was good to get it confirmed that game-based learning is a major emphasis here in the Nordic region. And we're going to hear from some companies shortly about what they're doing. And, so we have a workshop, and you looked at the program, there's going to be parallel sessions now. So those of us who are into learning and game-based learning and so on, we're going to have a separate workshop, and we're going to go in depth and hear more about what these companies are doing and how they're different and and how they hope to go forward and so on. In terms of segments, so what segments are most important? So you can see here, down at the left-hand side there, you have daycare, and then primary schools, secondary schools, and so on. So you can see most of the companies really focus on primary and secondary education. And so that, that should make you think a little bit. And so what does that imply? And in terms of challenges and so on, we see in the United States it is quite challenging to penetrate elementary and secondary schools. And so we're going to be talking more about that later today and tomorrow, and how we're seeing that happening in the U.S., what strategies companies are following to enter that. But let me just make a point here about this first section. This is daycare. I will show in our workshop, I have a slide that will show the importance of the toddler market. Over 50% of educational apps for the iPad are for toddlers. Now, some of you have probably seen that. When I fly back and forth between the Nordic region and California, I sit on the plane and watching kids, trying to pass time. It is absolutely amazing to see young kids that are year and a half, 2 years old, working through on the iPad and so on. So, and selling directly to parents of toddlers, especially in my area. I live in Cupertino. My biggest neighbor is Apple. And Asian parents are willing to spend a lot of money on apps for their kids for learning. Now, in terms of which markets, again, I guess it's not surprising that domestic market is significant, but the Nordic market overall is what most of the companies in the survey were focusing on, and then Europe, and then U.S. Of course, the U.S. market for educational applications is a huge market, but it's also very competitive. And then many companies are also interested in other markets, including Asia. Now, I heard a fascinating statistic the other day about Asia that points out why Asia can be an important market. Between now and 2020, the Asian middle class is going to grow from 0.5 billion people to 1.75 billion. That is a huge increase in the Asian middle class, and that's a huge market. Now, it's very challenging also, whether you're talking about India or China, for instance, and penetrating that with your products. Next one, where is competition currently the strongest? So I'll quickly, and we will make these slides available for those of you who want to look more at these, because it could take some time to look at in detail. So I'll just point out, and it's not surprising that the American market, everyone recognizes that it's a huge market, also very competitive. And you can see in the Nordics, less so, more modest competition in the Nordic. So again, you could draw some implications. Well, maybe try to get really good traction in the domestic market, gain market validation, and then get ready for the other market you want to focus on. Not too many. That's again something we're going to talk about in the workshop. I'm afraid that too many of the companies that participate in the survey, we're looking at a number of different markets. It is very challenging to target one market rather than doing a number. That's a good way to kill the company, if you try to tackle a number of international markets at the same time. It is so not easy. Okay, if you have external funding, quickly again, you can see that a lot of companies in this region are getting government and public sector grants and so on. So on the one hand, that's great. You get some funding to do some initial work, and so maybe some market validation, get the product done, and so on and so forth. But there is a big but. But do not get too, focused on that at the exclusion of private capital, which is what we call smart money. Money is one thing, but you want smart money, money that can give you advice, that can open doors for you, and so on. That is a unique character of venture capital and angels and so on. When you talk to startup companies, which I do in Silicon Valley all the time, that's what they focus on. That's why they go into incubators. Now we have education, ed-tech-focused incubators, and the primary role of those are to open doors, to help ed-tech entrepreneurs connect to customers, to get strategic revenue. That is a key element. And whether it's with Cisco and all the big tech companies are interested in education, and they can also be good strategic partners. Yep. Yeah. I'll probably have just a few more minutes here, then I'll be done. So in terms of external funding for the next 1 to 3 years, you can see that in terms of the different types of external funding they expect and where it will come from, you can see that it's split in each of these. They're looking at not just domestic, but also in the Nordic market and so on. I think the conventional wisdom is that it's very hard to get to raise capital in the Nordic region in general, certainly compared to in Silicon Valley. There's a lot of risk capital in Silicon Valley. I think that picture is changing somewhat, but maybe not so much in the very early stage. It's still hard, based on the companies I talked to, it's very hard to get that risk capital when you're starting out. But once you've proven, you got some market validation, you're out there, you have customers, you can get funding. Example. How many, and I'm sure all of you in the audience know this Norwegian company, It's Learning, right? It's an LMS company, and learning management system companies were a dime a dozen. Lots of learning management system companies out there, and I segmented that industry, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the workshop. But It's Learning has been around for a while. They just got 47 million euros in private equity a couple of weeks ago. It's a Northern European private equity company, and Creandum, a Swedish venture firm, is also in there as an investor. But that's significant funding. I mean, I was surprised. Now, I know that early last year, there was a Canadian company. So it's a North American company. They're primarily targeting and operating in the United States. But I think they're out of Waterloo. Desire to Learn. They got $80 million venture funding last year. So here's a privately, a company that were not on anyone's radar. And suddenly they decided to go out and seek private venture funding. Why? They looked out at the market and said, now is the time. We either jump or we just stay as we are and maybe wither off. And we got to take advantage of it now. We got to upgrade our products. We got to get more aggressive in the marketplace and so on. We can't get that with recurring revenue. We need some serious funding. They went out and got $80 million. And then what have they done? Acquiring. They're saying, what technology do we need? And beefing up marketing and so on. So it's fascinating to see the changing dynamic in the market. I think I just have a couple of more, and then I will quit. Access to the following resources. I will just say one thing here. Look at this. Technical competence, extremely high. So these Nordic companies are good. This is what we know about the Nordic region. We know our technology. At least they have great confidence in the technology. We don't need that. What we need is, business and coaching, financial advice, and networking, and so on. We're not quite as good at and selling. We don't teach selling in schools in Norway or in the rest of the Nordic countries or in higher education. I think Americans are more into, oh yeah, selling. Oh man, that's great stuff. And so that's something the Nordics have to learn. To what degree are we following? You can see in terms of business models, business plans, and marketing plans, This is still work in progress, still evolving. So hopefully, you know, that's something you got to work on and work that out and have a clear idea of where are you going, what's the business model, how are you going to make money, how are you going to monetize stuff, and there are lots of issues around that we'll talk about in the workshop. And I think my final slide, challenges ahead. Well, access to risk capital, although as I stated, it's getting a little better in the Nordic region, but if you want to go big, like Jostein Svendsen, a friend of mine who is the CEO of We Capital, We Video, Kreasa before that. Jostein came over and had dinner with a few of us a couple of years ago and then decided, hey, I'm really, and he's not the traditional Norwegian entrepreneur. He's different. He said, man, I'm going to take on the world and I'm going to really make something happen. And so he went back with a proposal to the board. They gave him green light. He moved 2 or 3 people over, set up a shop in Palo Alto, ended up getting $19 million in venture funding last year. So he's off and running. And so understand the global education and learning market. I spent 20 years focusing on that, so I can, and the others that can help, even, you know, provide free advice. So as Keith said, there's a lot of free advice if you take advantage of it in Silicon Valley. Yep, 1 minute, yep. Good timing. And so you can read the other ones, you know, proving the concept outside of the domestic market. I talked about smart money, finding the business model. And this is a challenging one too, especially when you're focusing, at least initially, on the Nordic customers. The mindset about paying for high education, you know, for high quality education. We typically take that for granted. It should be free. So anyway, hopefully that's given you a little background. And now we're going to, I will stop and we will invite 4 of the companies. And I think we agreed that Harry will start out, will come down. And the strategy is that we ask these 4 companies to spend 5 minutes or 3 to 5 minutes and focus on primarily 2 things. Based on their journey and what they have done, what are some key opportunities as they see it? And B, what are some challenges? And then we're going to give them much more time in the workshop to elaborate on those things. So with that, we'll start with Harry and then go to, I think, Barber and then Eugene and Osman, I think. So do a quick intro to yourself. You can do a better job than I can. So I will exit right now. Thank you. Whoop, 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 whoop. You want to?
I think I can. I can try
you
to
are okay.
sound.
Yeah, just take my watch.
Okay, then I'll use mine.
Okay.
Let's see how it works. This way. Can you other way? This way.
Yeah.
And here. Okay. This is no, this VGA.
Oh, you're VGA.
Yeah. Okay, hello everyone. I am Harri Ketamo from Edu Limited, and we are a team of 8 people from Finland and producing math elements. I try to answer the questions, but I also introduce what we are doing at the same time. We all know that according to any report, Western school system is broken. The group sizes are far too high, dropout rates are high, running school is expensive. Well, we are not fixing the school system, and we are producing after-school activities for parents and kids. In fact, we are building virtual mathematics school for kindergarten and elementary education as after-schools program. And why? There are nearly 1 billion kindergarten and elementary school age kids in the world. Unfortunately, less than half of them, let's say 300 to 400 million, do have an access to adequate school, a school with curriculum, with qualified teacher, with assessment and feedback. But according to GSM Association, in 2016, more than 90% of those kids access the internet via mobile internet. And that's where we are going to. We are building mobile virtual school for mathematics as after-school activity to give a real serious choice for parents to get their kids educated in mathematics, no matter if they have access to real school or some not that good school. Because we can be sure that in 2016, the number of the kids who do have an access to adequate school is not really much higher than today. But internet can change the things. Then challenges and ideas behind our approach. We know that kids are ready to do more work for their game characters than what they are ready to do for themselves. That's why we have developed game characters that want to learn mathematics. And kids are responsible to teaching mathematics for their game characters. Our challenge is that in educational sector, we are not competing against other educational products. We are competing against other games, no matter if they are hard games or casual games, but we are competing the time. That's why we have to develop methods that really give answers to what kids are interested. They are interested in developing game characters. And we are not teaching. We say, don't study, teach. Kids are teaching. The game doesn't teach. In order to teach game characters, kids have to get their knowledge from parents, for older sisters, from friends. But the learning is done via terms of social learning, and the game is for motivation and engagement. The idea in the game is to beat online opponents, as in most of the games, taught by real persons, and what rewards to gaining all the trophies and access to next level. So basically this is the game story. But the challenge is, in educational markets, we quite often develop products for kids. Of course, the kids have to love to play the game, they have to get motivated and engaged, but who is going to pay? We are not going to sell to schools, we are selling to parents. And parents have to feel that we are trusted game. We give something also for parents. And that's why we are now, we have launched our game, and now we are soon launching our parental platform. In parental platform, parents can check how their children have progressed, in what they are good, and in what they need more advices. And when parents have a very small time, they can directly focus on, oh, my kid needs more advices in counting after 20, so let's discuss on these. And we give parents to feel more secure while educating their kids. The education is not that you have to be the teacher in order to discuss about education with your kids. You just have to be aware on what to discuss, and that's very important. So focusing on parents is one thing I think is a challenge, how we can make parents sure that they can trust us, but also when we can make, that's very important for our business. When we can analyze data from one kid very well, in order to say parent that you should focus on this theme with your kid and approach it from this point of view. Currently we have approximately 20,000 players with our browser game. We launched our Apple game yesterday, so there are not too many Apple players today, but browser game, 20,000 players. But when we have, let's say, 10 million players all over the world, currently the players are all over the world, so we have players from 106 countries. But when the number is greater, we can also show the bottlenecks of learning global. Everybody has heard that Finland has good reputation in PISA, but we have also a bottleneck. According to our game data, the bottleneck is in 4th and 5th grade fraction numbers. In our teaching, we don't teach odd-nominated fraction numbers like something divided by 3, divided by 5, and we can see that in gaming data. But we can see also similar phenomena all over the world. And now when we have data from 10 million, 100 million kids, we can also say that in this country you should focus on this topic. And this is one of our future plans, to go from gaming to data-driven company. And I haven't answered all the questions, but this is something I prepared, so I think you can ask questions and discuss more on breaks, and I don't know if we have time for questions now.
We have some Q&A after the presentation.
Okay. So, thank you for listening to me.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting us here today. We're really excited to be here, me and Janus. My name is Barbara Baig. I'm a tech entrepreneur. I founded one of the first app stores back in 2005, backed up by one of the early investors from Skype. So for the past 2 years, me and Janus have been working on Right Reader. Right Reader is basically a new scientific learning tool. I love the word disrupt, and when we speak of disrupting learning, we really need to take a step back and say, okay, we need to question the way, the methods that are used in schools today. And one of the things that we have disrupted is that instead of starting starting to learn the children how to write, we basically start or encourage children how to read, because we feel that has a better approach. Currently, we co-financed, or the research is co-financed by the Agency of Research and Innovation in Denmark, and currently we are the most sold educational app in Denmark. The key challenge is that, as we know, as also one of my former colleagues mentioned, that in Denmark especially we have a functional illiterate rate of, that's basically students going out of 10th grade, 15 to 20%. And that's a huge challenge, because the society we're going to live is less industry and more information, where we need to adapt more information. So what me and Dana thought is basically we need to move back and start from early kindergartens and give children a head start when they enter the school or the primary school, so that they can get a head start in terms of literacy, because that is basically, as we see, as the main and key challenge. And when we speak of disrupt, I asked Janus, who has basically been teaching for the past 16 years, that, for instance, the approach which most of the Western society use in terms of literacy is the phonetic approach. So we speak a lot about disruptiveness in technology, but what about disruptiveness in mythology? Phonetics approach, can anybody guess how many years we've been using that? 200 years. We have been doing the phonetic approach in terms of learning. And I'm being like a tech entrepreneur, I like to challenge that and say, hey, there must be a better way. If not totally replacement, we need to support the phonetic approach with other methods of learning in order to take care of our key challenge, which is to bring down the functional illiterate rate of students. So we need to push back some of the responsibilities to parents, because the parents are the children's first and best teachers. And many parents think that, okay, that teaching and learning is the responsibility of the school. No, because it's the parents that have learned the child how to speak by encouraging the children, by repeating and stuff like that. So it's also the parents that need to support the child in terms of reading and writing. And with our app, they can basically do that. And it has a meaningful way, which I can also explain more in depth in the workshops. The reason why I mention is Professor Edward Mullers, who is basically from the University of London, made a huge research stating that what impact the home has in terms of literacy, and it's huge. Especially the mother's education has a huge role in terms of how good a child will be able to read and write in the coming years. Opportunities which lies ahead and how we can use technology. I mean, technology is really good. We can support, technology can support children in terms of they can help them create. Our apps helps them to create books in a meaningful way. But our point is also that we need to also question technology. If you look at the app stores, I've been marketing apps for the past 7 years, and I can say that more than 90% of the apps coming out is basically based on old methodology and old learning. Just because it's wrapped into a tablet or an iPad and with some colors and stuff like that doesn't mean that it's necessarily good for the child. One of the leading literacy PhDs in Denmark, Jeppe Bunskov, says this, that in best case, it will not make the child dumb. In best case. So we really need to question, just because iPads and tablets are hot doesn't mean that everything's good, what's in them. So that's basically the pitfall of technology can be that nobody's questioning. I mean, if tablets is the answer, what's the question? So this is basically in terms of the opportunities, scalability. Our app is scalable. It's currently in Danish. We're localizing in Swedish, Norwegian. It's localized in UK. We're launching next week in UK. We're going to the US afterwards. The really good opportunities that we can target B2B in Denmark, why we're number one is because we've targeted the B2B segments. All the kindergarten, one of the major councils in Denmark, Odense Kommune, they have more than 250 institutions. They've decided to implement our app in each of their, across all their iPads. So this is a way in order to attack the B2C market. And one of the challenges is, of course, to explain the methodology which we're using, and not necessarily, I mean, because people say what phonetics is the only answer to everything, and we're like challenging that. So really excited to be here, and hopefully we can share and learn in the coming days here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Asmund Furseth. I'm CEO of Kahoot, or Mobitrol is the company's name. This is my second venture. I did, or still doing actually, a clean tech 20 million euro venture. That is, we fired everyone last year, so I have to start a new one. It's not actually I who started it, so I'm the CEO now, started actually in March. So it's kind of a new space for me. It's my second presentation of Kahoot, so hopefully it goes well. What we are doing in Kahoot is kind of our challenge, how to create a learning space with students like this that are engaged into the learning. The way we do it is with our first program on the platform, which is multiple choice quiz, creator and player, where you can log in with any of your devices and start playing. The teacher is empowered with the creator making the quiz, and takes him 5 minutes on the bus on his way to the teaching, and he gets real engagement. One of our teachers that's using the program said that she has been doing polling before, where she had like 30% attendance. With Kahoot, she gets 90% of her students playing and learning. We call it social play knowledge with Kahoot quiz. We have a big team. The professor Alf Inge is using it in his classroom, and we are kind of now introducing it in a private beta to the schools we feel will really use it. We have a pedagogy behind it all, where we are saying how can technology facilitate learning. Replace teachers, empower teachers, make learning relevant, captivate learners. Almost all of them, apart from replacing the teacher. We are empowering the teacher, not replacing him with technology. We have models that we can go deeper into in the later sessions, where you kind of have this effect of the student, as was mentioned earlier. The student becomes a teacher, makes quizzes for his fellow students, teaches them the course. Try to make a multiple choice with questions that are almost correct about the subject that you don't know anything about. You will learn a lot. Of course, from this you can get a lot of power tools for the teachers, statistics, etc. Our challenge now is, of course, to prioritize our users and markets. We have tried it in different markets. It's working with great success, but we need now to prioritize where we put in our efforts. It's a big market in the US, but as we heard today, it's a big competition out there as well. We need to get a business model that is working, and it takes time to get the business model rolling, especially if you're going for such a kind of marketplace of quizzes where you pay per usage. It doesn't fund the company for a while. So, of course, then getting funding is a challenge. And then scaling, and scaling in which market, how fast, how many years. If we are a big team, it costs a lot of money to sustain the company. So these are our challenges that we would discuss in this session later today. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eugene. I am from Stockholm and the founder of Mind Vitamins. I am very sorry, I'm kind of nervous, and I'm also both humble and proud to be a part of this team of such brilliant entrepreneurs. Let me start off talking about why I'm doing what I'm doing. I became a parent for about 3.5 years ago, and as always, like first-time parent, I start to look how to best teach my child about this world. And what I focused on is data talking about that children are becoming worse and worse in reading. The trend is that with each year children read less and became bad in reading comprehension. And why I think this is important. And the thing is, in our world of media and a lot of information, we need to know how to read, how to understand what we consume. Because if we don't understand it, we just became a passive consumers of information. We cannot actually make our own decisions. We just follow someone else. And this is very important for our future. So I was starting to think, what can we do about it? What can we do about reading? How can we make children to read again? And this is a big problem, and everybody knows about it. Politicians, companies, publishing companies, they know about the trend. They know about the statistics. But what are the solutions? When we see politicians and their debates, what they're doing is their suggestion for the solution is how we make children to go to library. And I think it's not the right answer, because if we look at books, well, they're quite boring if you compare them to gaming, if you compare them to TV and other media where children are right now on internet, and they're playing games. So and it was in 2009, and it's just the time then Apple introduced iPad, and everyone was talking about how good it is, or if it will be bad or good for companies. But what I saw back then, I saw that iPad will be huge in school. So I decided to find some kind of a solution to get children to read. So what I think that what we need to disturb is not the reading itself, but our current business models, publishing business models, where they focus solely on books. What we need to focus on is storytelling, because if we think back to our history, the huge thing was storytelling. We're always engaged when we tell and when we listen to stories. So that's, I think, a solution. We need to focus on stories, not on books, not on digital media, not on text itself, but on stories. So what I want to do is to find new ways to tell a story with help of digital media, and especially the tablets. Find new ways, engaging ways to tell a story, not solely focusing on text, but combining game solutions, graphics, interactions, and text, so the children will feel engaged, and they will find their love for reading again. And that's what we, with Mind Vitamins, are doing. And okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah, let me just make a comment. I'm really happy you guys did this. This was, we had not interacted with these company representatives before. It's all been on the internet using surveys and so on. So I'm glad they agreed to do this, and so we really appreciate it.
Okay, so we've come that far. It's getting close to lunch, but we have a few minutes, and I expect we also have a few questions. And I'm going to ask Keith and Eilif, could the two of you come up and join me here? Could I ask you? I realize I haven't prepared you for this, but that's all the more fun. That's how it works. And any question, essentially, to the companies, to Eilif, to Keith, the contributors this morning. We have about 10 minutes. We can field some questions.
If you have hard questions, it goes to Keith. I take the easy ones.
Okay. And there is no agenda, so anything, guys, just go.
We answered all your questions already.
Ja, let's just jump into it. Yeah. I'm looking for nationalizing. learning systems were in
sort of implemented in an organization, in a company.
So you basically talk about intrapreneuring. In fact, I had a session of Silicon Vikings where we focused on starting companies inside bigger companies, like looking at Cisco and so on. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I was more talking about sort of implementing like an area, an arena for learning systems actually located within the company. You're talking about sort of the university perspective.
Again, enterprise learning platform?
I get your question. We have with IKEA, we are using kind of Kahoot, the platform with IKEA, to do their training of professionals.
I see.
Helping them creating good questions so that they can kind of learn their material. If that is.
Well, there's a lot of work. In fact, the biggest market for learning in the U.S. is corporate training.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, and the biggest the biggest trainer in the U.S. is the U.S. military, in fact, and they're very advanced. They spend a lot of money on training people and using advanced technology. But you go to all the Silicon Valley companies and companies elsewhere, they have a lot of internal training systems, and I know people at Cisco who've worked in their training organization. A lot of the corporate training is focused particularly on sales and marketing people, because they have to go out, they have to learn about new products coming out all the time and going out selling these products. So I have a good friend who heads the training system, the training department at Autodesk, as an example of a company that has people and representatives all over the world that's selling Autodesk products. And so they're all the time looking for new technology that they could use to more quickly and better train people inside the company.
Yeah, let me add to this, because that's one of the ways we're looking at monetizing our games, because we, this is actually picking up on something Harry said about educational games and who you sell to. Our current model is that, especially for the States, we're going to give away the games that are played by the kids. We're actually going for a much harder market. We're initially targeting for the middle school kids. So we can't sell it to the parents, because a teenager will not play a game bought to them by the parents. And you can't sell it to the kids because they'd rather play something else. So there's this sort of dark matter group at middle school age. So we're going to give the kids the games for free, which means we'll give them to the teachers. And we're looking to monetize somewhere else. And one of our design principles for our games is that a game is actually the equivalent of a musical instrument. On a same musical instrument, you can play a simple tune or you can play a complicated tune. So if we build the game right, that same game can be used for corporate training. And so we're looking at corporate training as a potential monetization to subsidize giving away the same game to the kids in the schools.
Interesting. Very good.
Yeah.
Good answer.
Okay.
We have a little time, and I have a few names on my piece of paper. And I believe you were first, Martha, but maybe that was just a clarifying comment. Did you have a question you wanted to field? Okay. Christian.
Yeah, my name is Christian Liebersic. I work here at the University at the Department of Development Studies. We're doing a master online course. And as you said, Keith, it's really true that you get this feeling it's one-to-one tutoring when you're teaching. However, now we're ending up making this course very labor intensive, so we have to employ tutors as well. You talked about, thousands of students, and you talked about crowdsourcing and trying to use peer-to-peer review. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about this way of giving feedback, because in the end of the day, we have a few teachers and our resources are limited. And yes, I can go into the forums, I can answer individual questions, but when it comes going beyond the 25 students, it's becoming very difficult. And perhaps also the presentation by Kahoot is maybe also a way where you build in some feedback mechanisms rather than doing simple quizzes or these types of multiple choice things where, of course, you can give automatic feedback. So that would be very interesting, how we can scale up.
Would you want to comment a little bit, Keith, on that?
Yeah, well, that's part of the interesting research part of it. I mean, that's very much unknown. I mean, it's one of the things that we're really interested in looking at. You know, we're a research university, and that's what's driving most of us. How much of that can you scale, and to what extent can you scale it? So we don't have answers. We have all the questions, and what we're doing is looking at the questions. And in the process, we're giving away free MOOCs.
Yeah.
Okay, so nothing's free. We're getting, they're the product, right? In a sense, that's the test bed for doing the research.
Yeah, I think the MOOC companies all looking at that, and I suspect that the edX and folks have a bunch of people that are working on that. So I think the beauty of this, what has been happening now around the MOOCs, is it's created a lot of excitement. And I know I talked to Roy P., and Roy is all excited getting his hands on all that data coming in and understanding, you know, the learning processes and how this is happening, because we really have never fully understood this thing, how learning happens. And
we have time for one more question.
Yeah, okay.
Is it okay that I interrupt?
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely.
I saw one eager hand, and then after that, I'm afraid it's lunchtime, but still okay.
Yes, thank you. Kind of follow up from Christian. I was challenged 2 months ago. I was giving a lecture at the Ministry of Education in Sri Lanka. And the Secretary of State there asked, well, we are able to have 25,000 students through the university system per year. But we actually do need 150,000 through this system. Can we give them some advice? and I suggest, of course, we have to go into online education. And I think MOOCs can solve the problem of learning. But when you go to the university per se has this issue that we have to formalize things. We have to give degrees, isn't it? We have to have some control, not just be happy with your learning things. We have to kind of prove via formal channels how to do that. And I think that's a big channel for us. I have a fairly good idea how to make MOOC. And that's also the challenge that you have. How you make it into a formal system where you actually get degrees from the MOOC.
Yeah, or at least get the credit. That's way towards the degrees, getting the credit. And that's another area that a lot of focus is on. And Udacity, you know, the governor of California called up Sebastian Thrun at Udacity and said, I have a problem with the state educational system, and pointed to San Jose State. So San Jose State now is working with Udacity and doing some remedial classes, and they are moving towards giving credit for that. And the Gates Foundation has a big study, I think, going on looking at for how can we move towards getting credit for some of these moves. So that train is in motion, but and I'm sure you have some things to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it a... Yeah. I think within at most 2 years, people will be getting most of the credits for degrees, some places, purely through online methods. I'll give it at most 2 years. At most 2 years, yeah. I mean, 6 months ago, I would have given it 5 years. So much has happened in the last 6 months. I'll put it down to 2 years.
By tomorrow, it's down to 1.
There does seem to be a trend. It's happening unbelievably fast.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Well, we have some challenges, we have some discussions. I would kind of like us to give a big round of applause to everyone. Lunchtime. What we will do now is to guide you to our